You need to know what's important, and everything is not important. I hate to break it to you. I know it feels like it is, but it isn't. And I think as business owners, we need to learn discernment and to get really good at making choices about what actually warrants our focus and what we can put down either altogether or for now. And the way that I suggest people come at that is to regularly think about their vision.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, business coach and value whisperer, and this is the show where we talk about value whispering, the smarter way to market your small business that just happens to be brilliant for introverts. Now, one big question that comes up time and time again when it comes to marketing, and maybe you've had this question yourself, is how on earth do I find the time to fit everything in? And I've learned over the years, and particularly at the minute, it's my 18th year in business, and I've been reflecting back on what are those biggest lessons I've had. And one of the questions I get asked most often is, how do you get everything done? And what I've learned over that time is that how I get things done keeps changing and evolving. There are so many lessons I've learned the hard way, but I've also learned that there's no one answer. There's no just do this and it's going to work for you, unfortunately, because we're all in a different season of life. Our brains work in different ways. Our environment is different. There are so many factors that change. It's really hard to find one productivity method that works for everyone. And I think the last time we had a guest on the show talking about productivity was right back at the beginning. So probably about 4 or 5 years ago, because I keep coming up against advice of do this, it will work. And I don't really believe that until I had a conversation with Louise Miller recently, and she had a very different approach. She gives people space, time to reflect, time to pause and think and understand what works for them. She doesn't give any prescribed way to manage your business, but her clients come away feeling so much more productive. So I've invited her onto the show. Thankfully, she said yes. And so today we're going to dive into productivity and in a different way to how you might have heard before. And I think if you have been struggling to get things done and struggling to feel accomplished at the end of each day and to manage your energy. We were speaking with Roxana recently, and she said that it's less about time management and more about energy management. And Louise definitely picks up that thread and gives us the next piece of the puzzle and a wonderful framework I think you're going to love. So if you are ready to stop trying to push harder, do more and cram more into your days, but to finally find that way of growing your business that's going to work for you, feel confident, and work with your rhythms, then I think you're going to take a lot away from today's episode. So let me welcome Louise Miller. So hi, Louise. It's great to have you with us on the show today.
Hi, Melitta. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I was so pleased you said yes. And also the timing of you saying yes couldn't be more perfect, because we recently had Roxana on the show talking about ADHD and how it can be difficult to get things done. And I really love your take on productivity because it's quite different to what I've heard before. And it's really no pressure, finding your way. And I loved all of that. So I'm really looking forward to diving into how can we get more done, or how can we get things done smoothly in a way that works for us. But before we dive into that, I'd love if you could share with the audience a bit about your story. How did you find that this was your thing?
Yeah, so I will try and keep it as concise as I can because, I could talk for ages on this. But the main thing for me that led me here was, I think this is true for a lot of people who start our own businesses, was horrendous experience in the jobs we were doing before. So, that kind of saying, if you need something doing, give it to a busy person. That was me for the 15 years that I was working in normal jobs. It was absolutely horrendous. I was always so good at what I did. People really respected me and could see that I was doing good work. And I just kept taking on more and more and more and more and more. And then in 2015, everything started to unravel. And I had a real light bulb moment that was kind of the starting point to what I'm doing now. I remember it so clearly. I was sitting in my office. I was managing a team at that time of 5 professional services people in higher education. And I was sitting in my office with a horrible view of a brick wall with those horrible fluorescent lights. My eyes were just really bloodshot and sore. And I was like, right, I need a glass of water. So I stood up to walk to the kitchen, and literally 15 paces from my desk and halfway there, I had this really clear kind of question that popped into my head. And it was, Louise, why are you always rushing to get everything done? And I don't know why that landed so strongly, but I had a real visceral reaction to that thought just popping straight into my head. And it made me realize that I had a choice. I could either stay on the hamster wheel, where I was appreciated and praised and rewarded. It wasn't like people were treating me badly, but I was also exhausted and then eventually diagnosed with work-related stress and anxiety, or I could find a way to step off of that hamster wheel. And, in that moment, I kind of had this realization there would never be a moment when everything would be done, right? I had this massive long list of things to do. And I don't know what I thought was going to happen, that somebody was going to lean over to me and say, well done, Louise, you've done it all, go home, have the rest of the day off. That never happens in a job, does it? The more you're doing and the better you are at doing it, generally speaking, the more they give you to do. So to cut a very long story short, I, as I sort of alluded to a moment ago, was really unwell with work-related stress and anxiety. Ended up a week after our wedding up in Northumberland here in the UK in a really secluded, lovely little fisherman's cottage looking out onto a deserted beach. I had the flu, so that was fun. And I just sort of picked up my phone and I asked Google, how do I slow down? And in that moment, I discovered the slow living movement. And that absolutely changed everything for me. And eventually I handed in my notice. I was really excited to start out on my own. And then I had a massive existential crisis, because what I realized was that my strengths were in helping people to focus and get stuff done. But that was in conflict with what I'd come to realize in all the reading and research I'd been doing around slow living, which is that there is more to life than getting stuff done. So I didn't want to feed that damaging narrative that had made me ill, which is that our self-worth is tied up in our productivity. But I knew that small business owners, particularly people who were comfortable in the right brain space of creativity and having loads of ideas, that they needed my left brain to help get their work out in the world. And I knew that was what I was really good at. So before I felt really comfortable stepping into this kind of new role for myself and this kind of new business I was building for myself, before I could do that comfortably, I decided I needed to change how we think about productivity. And so I came up with a new definition. And that new definition is kind of the foundation of everything that I do. So shall I tell you what that is?
Oh, yeah, please.
So I think most people, if you ask them what productivity is, they're going to say it's something along the lines of getting more done in less time. And to me, that feels really uncomfortable. It feels really constrained and restrictive, and like you're setting yourself up in this battle against time, which you're never going to win. So the definition that I came up with is that productivity is about doing what's important as efficiently as possible so that you can create space for what you love. I'm going to say that again, right? It's doing what's important as efficiently as possible so you can create space for what you love. Because I'm not here for the hustle. I am here to enjoy the journey. So the difference around my definition is that it's about doing what's important, not doing all of the things. And it's about creating space for what you love. Because I think without that piece of the puzzle, we can get stuck in this kind of treadmill, like the hamster wheel that I mentioned earlier, of doing more doing so that we can do more doing. And that is not why I'm running my business. And I don't think that's what most of us want. So when I kind of landed on that, that allowed me to feel really comfortable in what I'm doing now. So that's kind of a potted version of how I've come to doing what I'm doing. As with many of us, it's not been a linear thing. It's not been straightforward, but yeah, that's how I came to, I'm going to say being a productivity mentor, but that's not really the term that I like, because I think people assume the wrong thing when they hear that, and we will get to that, I'm sure. But yeah, that's kind of the backstory.
Yeah, love that. And I think so many people, myself included, can relate to that. I used to, when I was working in corporate, I used to work like 120%. I put in everything. And it was only when I was pregnant and I had such bad morning sickness for 5 months, couldn't do everything. And so my team was stepping in and doing things, and the phone was ringing, and I just felt so bad. I couldn't even pick up the phone and speak to someone. And then my team was like, shall we answer that for you? Yes, please. They did everything. And they didn't do anything to the standard that I would normally do it. But I was getting calls from people across the organization because I worked in internal communications. All our clients were internal, and they all came to me and said, "Team's doing such great work," or "So and so did this. I was so happy." And I was like, oh my goodness, I've been doing all of this work so much more than I ever needed to. And since then, I've been aiming to do aim for B minus instead of A plus plus, and it's more than good enough for most situations. And that was a real light bulb for me. And then, of course, I never went back to the corporate office. I was like, oh, I can't even use this lesson. But then, yes, I do use that lesson in my business, of course. But I love the idea of productivity is doing what's important. What would you say to the person listening to this saying, but everything I do is important?
Yeah, and that is a key part of the way that I work with people is in order to be productive, you need to know what's important, and everything is not important. Hate to break it to you. I know it feels like it is, but it isn't. And I think as business owners, we need to learn discernment and to get really good at making choices about what actually warrants our focus and what we can put down either altogether or for now. And the way that I suggest people come at that is to regularly think about their vision. So what do you want your life and your business to look and feel like? And if you struggle to think about 10 years down the line, because I know I really struggle with that, the question that I ask quite often in sessions that I run with people is, what do you want your life to look like in 12 months' time? What do you want your business to look like in 12 months' time? Let's keep it to a time frame that we can kind of imagine ourselves in, rather than this far off future that I find difficult to connect to. And I think if you can do that often, and then from there start to think about, and what am I going to do to actually get me there? That creates a filter so that as you're looking at all of the things that feel really important, you can get really honest with yourself and go, okay, is this actually moving me in that direction or not? Is this something I'm doing because it's distracting me from the other stuff that I know would actually make an impact, but actually feels a bit uncomfortable? So I think that's something that people can get stuck in as well. So it's taking the time to just get really honest with yourself and think, where do I want to invest my precious time, energy, and attention in pursuit of this thing that I want? And it takes practice. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is possible.
Yeah, I love that approach. And it's, something anyone can stop and do right now. And I always love anything that's like that practical that we can stop and do it now. Which brings me to my next question. How can we encourage the person listening who's like, yeah, that makes sense, but I'm so busy, I can't stop and do that right now. I'll do it when I have time. We tend that, when I have a bit of time, I'll get to that. But of course, we never do because we haven't got the prioritization in place. So how do we give someone permission to take that time they need to start putting these priorities in place, really look at that vision and plan things backwards?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. And I'm glad you asked it because it means I can share an analogy that I think will help. So if you imagine that running your business, living your life is like wandering through a forest, right? So in the forest, like you have at the back of your house, if in the forest, there are lovely areas of gorgeous sunshine and little dappled areas of loveliness. But there are also those sort of dark, damp, dank little pockets where the sun rarely shines and there's muddy puddles and, tree roots that you're frightened of tripping over. So you're looking at your feet. And you're on a mission to get through this forest, but because you're looking at your feet, you're not necessarily looking ahead to where you're going. It's very easy to start to feel like you're getting lost and to start feeling like you're wandering around in circles. You can start feeling a bit of panic setting in because you start to wonder if you're actually even going in the right direction anymore. And all of that can feel very exhausting and actually a little bit frightening. So in that moment, you have a choice when you're starting to feel all those feelings. You can either keep walking around in circles potentially. You might get in the right direction, but equally you might spend a load of time, again, wandering around aimlessly, or you can just take a moment. So as luck would have it, in our lovely little imaginary forest, there's a treehouse up in the top of one of the tallest trees. And you can see that from your vantage point of feeling stressed and, frazzled. So you decide you're going to go up there to that treehouse. It's lovely and cozy, lovely little twinkly lights. So you climb up to the top of this treehouse, comfy cushion, cup of tea, biscuit, and you have a little moment, catch your breath, start to kind of gather yourself, and the panic starts to disappear. And once you've settled yourself down a bit and you've caught your breath, you can go look out the window. And from there, you can look back at where you started, which helps you see how far you've come. You can look to where you're headed, so you can remind yourself of the destination. And then you can look back down onto the forest floor and see what route is going to get you there, and start to think about mapping out that route, so that when you go back down onto that forest floor, you are feeling a lot more resourced. You're trusting yourself. You know where you're going. You've got the energy and the motivation to keep going on your journey. So I think that we can all agree that the most productive thing that that person did was take that moment up in the treehouse. And it might feel like a waste of time, but if that person had just carried on wandering about, that would have been an even greater waste of time and would have led to even more feelings of exhaustion and overwhelm. So does that make sense in terms of an understanding of why we need to stop?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always find that if I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed, feeling a little bit bogged down, feeling like a bit overwhelmed, those are the moments I've learned when I need to stop. I need to go for a walk. I need to do something different and give myself a bit of space. And every single time I do that and I come back and I'm like, oh, I can just do this. I start to see the simpler way to do things, and the path ahead becomes much clearer. It feels much more manageable. But if I just keep trying in that moment to keep going, I just go around in circles, as you said. It doesn't help. So I've personally found it's important to stop. But I also see it with other people, and my old self was like, but I can't possibly stop now. I've got so much to do.
Yeah, and sorry.
Yeah, but that goes against us, because then we just end up unmotivated, unproductive, more disappointed in ourselves, more exhausted and tired, and we see that path forward even less. So yeah, it goes against the grain, really.
Yeah, it really does. And I think there's two other things I just want to add to that. First of all, I think it's great that you said you have learnt to do that, because it's not a natural thing for us. We do have to kind of almost force ourselves sometimes, because it feels so counterintuitive when you are busy. You've got a very long to-do list. There's stuff that needs to be done. The thought of getting up and dragging yourself away it's hard, because it does feel counterintuitive to what we think we should be doing. And the other thing I wanted to add is that the reason we think we should be carrying on working, for a lot of us, is because that is how we've been programmed from a very young age. I was brought up in an environment where you're not allowed to go out and play until you've done your homework. I think that's true for a lot of people. You're not allowed to rest until you've done everything. But like I said before, we've never done everything. So if you're only allowing yourself to take that pause, to step away when you feel like everything is done, you're going to be waiting a very long time. So I think there's this massive kind of mindset shift that we all need to have around that. And it is very deeply ingrained culturally. I think one of the biggest fear that a lot of people have is that they're going to be perceived as lazy. But actually that lazy self, if we go with it, holds a lot of wisdom, because like you said, that stepping away, when you've done that, stepped out and gone for a walk, other people might think, well, you've still got stuff to do. That's lazy because you've got all this work to do, but that you've got wisdom from that. Yeah. So that when you came back, all of a sudden everything felt clearer. But you only kind of can see that when you've experienced it for yourself. So it feels like one of those things that you just almost need to just do it, even though it's uncomfortable, just try it and see what difference it makes.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about running your own business, is that you can run it how you want to. I remember we had, I think it was Kelly Heine on the show a few years ago now, but she was like, okay, I need to run my business. Now I have staff. I have to be there all the time. And then she had this little voice that's like, hold on, if you set it up this way, it's always going to run that way. So she had one afternoon a week that she took off, and she went and did something just for her. She would go to the spa, she would go for a hike, anything just to fill her soul. And the business worked fine. And so she's been able to continue that ever since. And I think sometimes we forget, it's our business, we write the rules. But then it's also a bit of a trap that it's our business. So we think we have to do everything, but then we can also not do anything. We can fall into that trap. Like, oh, I'll just take a bit of time and I'll just watch this show. And before you know it, we haven't got anything done. Yeah. Do you have any frameworks, or maybe it's what you told us previously about the vision, around how people can start to build themselves a schedule that's going to work for them?
Yeah. So with that, I think that the main thing, the starting point is always to just understand yourself better. Because if you go out there looking to copy what someone else is doing, it is never, ever going to work. So sure, you can get inspiration from people. You might be inspired by something that I share or that Melitta says during this conversation. But I don't want you to copy what we do because you are not us. And your personality, your preferences, what you've got going on in your life is very different to us. So that's the first caveat I just want to say. I think start from what you know feels good to you and what you know doesn't. And then I think it's about thinking about your energy, managing your energy in a way that feels good for you. So for me, again, I'm just sharing this as an example, not saying you need to do this. I know that my energy is best in the morning. So anytime I'm doing anything like this, if I'm running sessions, if I'm doing client calls, I try and do all of that before midday because I know that after I've had my lunch, my energy starts to fall through the floor and I'm not at my best and I can't show up at my best for other people. I also know that it benefits me to have a break in the middle of the afternoon. And that's now just a part of what I do because I'm feeling so sluggish and tired. I'm not going to be doing anything productive. I could sit and stare at my computer, but that's not going to help me. So I've kind of just got these boundaries. I don't know if that's not really the right word, but these kind of containers for when I know my energy is at its best and when I know it isn't, and making sure that I'm booking things in that match where my energy is. And the other thing I want to say with that is you also need to make sure you're saving your best energy for your own work. Because I think it's very easy to think we need to give all of our best energy to our clients. But then that leads to a situation where you've not got any left for yourself. And all of the things that are going to grow your business and move you forward in the direction you want to go in, that's when they get pushed down the list of priorities because you're saving them to the end of the day or the end of the week when you're tired. So yeah, have a little think about that. Think about when's your energy at its best and at its worst. I don't really like the word schedule because to me that feels a bit too restrictive and constrained. I talk about finding a rhythm in your business. I think having rituals for yourself can be really lovely. So if you know, for example, that say you know you need to sit down and write a blog post or something and you're not feeling in the mood, is there a little ritual that you can do beforehand that will help you get yourself in the mood rather than waiting until you feel like it? And again, that could look different for everybody. So yeah, I'm not really a big fan of blocking chunks of time out in your diary because I think that for most people that doesn't work. We see those chunks of time in our diary and we ignore them. So I think it's more about just having this overall sense of what feels good for you and what doesn't, when you're going to do what kinds of work roughly, and then build something around that that works for you, knowing that it can change and you're not going to get it right first time.
And it's music to my ears hearing you say that because I keep doing time blocking. And as you say, I just ignore it. That's on my calendar, but I'm in the moment getting my work done. And so I very rarely follow anything according to plan. And then I always feel like, oh, I'm really rubbish at this. But what I tend to do more of is give each day a theme. And like, okay, my theme today is this. If I do one thing, it's that. And then I can be happy and anything else is a bonus. And a lot of bonus things done. But I know that I've got the most important thing ticked off for me. And I know that's the thing that's going to like move my business forward. So I've just kept things super simple. And that works for me. And when you were saying that about different energy, I had one particular client and she was trying to work 9 to 5 every day and she was really struggling and she got nothing done in the morning. And then later in the afternoon, she started to get her energy, but then she had to stop. So I questioned, well, why are you doing it that way around? And she's like, well, that's the way it's done, isn't it? It's like, well, it's your business. You can do it as you want. And for her rhythm was starting her business at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and starting with a little ritual. She had her thing that she needed to do to feel in the right space. And then she would work through till 7 in the evening. And that's when she was most productive and felt creative. And when we gave her permission, like, great, we'll do that. Suddenly everything clicked and she was so much more happier. And she had her mornings for like doing whatever she needed to do, meet up with friends or do her fitness. And that worked beautifully for her. And I love the other thing you're saying about giving the best of your energy to your clients, because that's 100% what I did in my very first business when my kids were small. So I gave all my energy and focus to my kids and my clients, and I had nothing left for me. So I really did come very close to a burnout, and it was a real wake up call. And I ended up just ditching that business altogether. And now when I look back, it's like, actually, I could have done things very differently and managed it something else, but it was fine. It brought me to where I am, and I'm very happy where I am. But yeah, it was very much an all or nothing kind of thing. And I don't know, I just never even thought to include myself in my day and to give myself some space. So yeah, it's been a big learning curve and I'm still learning.
And that's the thing, it's never fixed. It can shift and evolve, and that doesn't mean you've done it wrong. It just means that you've changed, your circumstances have changed and things need to evolve along with you. I mean, coming back to the point around giving some of your good energy to yourself, a massive change that I made years ago now, but I've been doing it ever since because it works so well for me. I used to save all of my own stuff till a Friday, by which point I was tired and there was stuff that I needed to do for my clients that I hadn't done. So I never had any time on a Friday to do my own stuff, or if I did, it felt really squeezed. But the minute I shifted that all around, and I protect my Mondays now really fiercely, I have no calls on a Monday ever. Well, that's not true. So every now and then, but it's on my terms. I don't let people book in. Mondays is my day to write my email to my list, do whatever marketing stuff I need to do, work on whatever projects I'm working on, think about episode ideas for my podcast. Whilst I'm at the beginning of the week, I'm feeling fresh, get all of that done. And then whatever happens in the rest of the week, I know that I've done what I wanted to do to move myself and my business forward. So that's just something else to think about. But again, it depends on your circumstances. You know, your client working those hours is perfect for her, would be terrible for someone with small children. So it's understanding all of that. And I think that can be a challenge actually, if you've got kids, but that is how your energy works. So, you know, we need to factor all of that in. But there are ways and means, and it's just about building that self-awareness and then giving yourself permission to do what feels right for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Before kids, I was never a morning person, but they kind of force you into that.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing you said previously before we booked today was that productivity happens before you take action. Can you explain a little bit more about that? Because I think that's such an interesting concept, but it's not the way I would have ever thought about things.
So, yes, the treehouse kind of analogy that I mentioned earlier is kind of what I usually share when I'm talking about this, because it was the most productive thing that we did in that journey through the treehouse, through the forest, was to go up into the treehouse and take a moment. And it's what we do in that treehouse that allows us to be productive when we get back down on the forest floor. So another kind of illustrative thing that I share often around this, I think helps people. I've created this thing called a progress cycle. So if you imagine a circle, and at the top you've got pause, next to that we've got reflect, then we've got choose, then we've got act, then we've got complete. So pause, reflect, choose, act, complete. And the bit where you are determining how productive you are going to be is in those first three. It's not when you start taking action. It's in the pause, the reflect, and the choose. Because that's where you get to think about your vision, think about what it is that you're trying to achieve. That's where you get to just see how you're feeling, how's your energy doing. Then you get to reflect on all of that stuff as well. You reflect on the goals that you're trying to achieve, the things that are on your to-do list. Just give yourself some time with all of that so that you can make a choice around how you want to invest your precious time, energy, and attention, whether that's for the next quarter, whether that's for the next month, whether that's for the next 10 minutes. So in the pause, reflect, and the choose, when you start taking action, you're really crystal clear about what you're doing. You know why you're doing it. And from there, you are way more likely to actually finish the thing that you started without getting distracted and sidelined and procrastinating and all of that stuff, because you've done those first three things.
I love that so much. And I love that you've chose it, like the wording of it as well, you know, that reflect and choose. I think too often we forget we have a choice. As you say, we're so programmed as to, well, this is the way you get things done. This is the way you have to work when you're kind of in work mode. But it doesn't have to be that way at all. We can really start to lean into what feels right and works for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the reason I love this kind of model so much is that we can use it, as I've kind of already suggested, we can use it in a really big way, like when you're doing a planning for the quarter or the month or the week or whatever. But everybody listening now could, when we get to the end of this conversation and you're about to go back to whatever it is you're doing in your day, Do the pause, reflect, and the choose before you start doing anything else, because that will prevent you from just picking up your phone and scrolling Instagram or whatever it is that we all tend to fill those little pockets of time with, that if we're not careful can eat into half an hour when we only thought we were going to spend 2 minutes. So we can use pause, reflect, and choose in a really small way to help us work through our to-do list in a way, because you're choosing, okay, what's the next thing off this list I've got in front of me, and making that choice consciously based on what's most important, you know?
Yeah. And I guess over time, that reflect moment, you're going to not just reflect on what are your options, but what's worked well for you in the past. And it's that moment where you can, instead of going to the default, oh, I have to do this, you can think, actually, I did that last time and it didn't quite work. What could I do differently? And so you're building that discernment, as you say, into the way you approach things. Is that what you find?
Yeah, 100%. And that is, so I run a thing called Making Happen Club, where I guide people through the planning process every month and every quarter. And that is essentially what we're doing. People come back month after month after month after month, and eventually they start to spot the patterns. They start to notice the things that keep getting carried over every month that they're not doing. And then they start to go, why am I not doing that? Is it because it's not important? Is it because there's some kind of fear or mindset thing that's getting in the way? Is it something someone's told me I should do, but actually don't want to? And there's so much insight in all of that. There's so much. And then you can practice that discernment that I mentioned earlier in terms of actually making your plan and coming up with the list in the first place, based on exactly as you've said, what felt good, what worked, what didn't work from your past experience. But if all you're doing is you've got your head down, you're wandering around on the forest floor and you're refusing to take that pause because you think it's not going to be a good use of your time, you're denying yourself all of that wisdom and all of that insight that comes from just taking that step out just for a moment.
Yeah. So you've guided a lot of people through this process, and you have, as you say, you've got that Make It Happen Club. What are the patterns that you've noticed that are the real reasons why people aren't getting things done? I'm sure we have a million and one excuses for why we don't get things done, but what's the real reason behind some of this?
Yeah. And I think some of this is going to relate to what we've already been talking about, but the three main things are that they're not focusing on the right things. So they're so caught up in the busy work and the stuff that makes them feel important, perhaps. That might sound a bit mean, but I think we all have some of that, where we're saying yes to opportunities when actually they're not aligned because we're grateful to have been asked for something, asked to do something, you know? So all of that kind of busy work, being productive in the wrong direction. So going off on a tangent that's taking you nowhere closer to your vision because perhaps you haven't got a clear vision, or you're not connecting in with that vision often enough. All of that will lead you to not focusing on the right things. And then this constant feeling that stuff's not getting done, or the important stuff's not getting done. The second reason is that people are not setting themselves up for success. So this one we haven't really touched on, actually. This is around people writing a plan or a to-do list, thinking that they are 3 people, that there are 36 hours in a day and 9 days in a week. Not obviously consciously doing that, but just completely overestimating how long things are going to take, not looking at your diary when you're deciding what you're going to do, just thinking what would feel good to do this week without any kind of grounding in what your reality looks like.
And what can I add to that?
Yeah.
Imagining that when you say something's going to take you half an hour, it's going to take you half an hour.
Yes,
Which never does.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. And, I think that's also always, well, not always, if we can pay attention, so if we can take the pause and notice that, eventually we'll start to realize that thing isn't going to take me half an hour, it's going to take me half a day. But I don't think anyone ever gets to the point where they correctly guess every single time, because life. But yeah, if you're not doing that foundational piece of noticing how long things take, looking at what's in your diary, how much time have you actually got, you're setting yourself up to fail before you've even started. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the second one. So not setting yourself up to success by not looking at your capacity. And then the third thing is, and this I think is mainly what we've been talking about today, is that they're not working on their business. So that's what we were talking about in terms of keeping your head down, pushing through, feeling like you just need to keep going because you've got so much to do. The only way you're going to get it all done is to just keep going. Then you're not giving yourself time to think. Then you're starting to make poor decisions about what you're going to focus on. And again, the important stuff doesn't get a look in because you're being so reactive. So yes, not focusing on the right things, not setting themselves up for success, and not working on their business, I think are the three things that I notice are getting in the way of people getting stuff done.
Yeah, after that burnout episode, and I took a step back and yeah, and this has been an ongoing thing, looking at what conditions do I need to succeed. And it's helped me change my rules. So if I work after 6 o'clock in the evening, then everything gets pushed and I don't sleep well and I don't do well the rest of the week. So I'm really strict on that. I don't work at weekends, which I always, sometimes I'll do a little bit if like I have the time, but it's just little extras. I don't plan to work at the weekends. So there's things like this I've noticed really impact my ability to get things done. And one crazy one, like I know for a lot of people, they have to have a clear desk to get things done. I cannot have a clear desk to get things done. If my desk is clear, I just think, oh, I've got nothing to do. So I have to leave myself clues on my desk as to what I'm working on so that I'll continue, and then it's cleared away once it's finished. So there's little weird quirks that work for me that I've had to build into my day. And it's been interesting going through this process with my clients as well to see what are those things that work for them and then sharing. And I guess this is probably what happens in your club as well, that people share one thing that worked for them and someone else gets it's like, well, that sounds like it might work for me, but it's not something that would have been on their agenda before or they would have thought about necessarily. What's the weirdest thing you've seen work for someone?
That's a good question. What's the weirdest thing? So I don't know that this is weird because I just think this is genius. But one of my clients in Make It Happen Club, once she had permission to work from her bed, everything got better because she just allowed herself to stay where she was comfy, and do her best work there. Because she found the minute she went and sat at her desk, all creativity was just sucked out of her, like, I don't know, like there was a dementor in the room and she was unable to function. So just doing stuff from her bed when she was in creative mode and then saving time at her desk, I guess more for the admin-y kind of more mechanical tasks that didn't need her to be creative. I don't know if that's weird, but I thought it was genius.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of a conversation I once had with my group clients and about where they feel most productive. And people were saying, oh, I feel most productive when I work in a cafe, but I feel most creative when I work in this space. And I think different spaces can do different things for us. And I know with my book, I had one particular chair in my living room, it's in the library that I say library, it's a bookshelf. But that's where I wrote my book and I got into the frame. If I sit in this corner, I work on my book and I get things done. And that really helped massively as well. It was, I think it's horses for courses almost. So yeah, that's quite a fun one to play around with.
It is. And there's something fun that I did once, just as another example of how you can get really creative with this stuff. Because I think a lot of people hear productivity and think their creativity needs to go out the window, but you can actually really use it to your advantage. I was completely stuck with something. I can't remember what it was. I mean, we're going back maybe 7 years or something, so I can't really remember the detail, but I can remember I was feeling completely stuck and stressed with something. So I built myself a den. I got myself a couple of chairs and a blanket and put the blanket over, and I went and got in like I was 5 with a piece of paper and a pen and just went and sat in my little fort or den, depending on what language you use for that kind of thing. And all of a sudden I was thinking differently because I disrupted the pattern that I was in quite an extreme way, going from sitting at my desk to sitting under a blanket fort or whatever. So yeah, you can do things like that and make it fun for yourself. You're running your own business, do it your way. It's all good.
Yeah. So anyone listening, if you have any weird or wonderful ways or places you get things done, do let us know.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that discussion. I can't wait to see what people get up to and where. Louise, you shared so much already, but I know that finding what works for us personally, it takes time and a bit of trial and error and playing around and building thoughts. But you have a productivity roadmap that people can download or is it a quiz, I think, that people can take to help them
Yeah, it's a quiz.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So those 3 key areas that are getting in the way of people getting stuff done that we just talked about, it can be really difficult to figure out and pinpoint exactly what's going wrong when you're in it. So the assessment that I've created helps you to identify which of those 3 areas is causing you the most problems and what you can do to get better in each of those areas. So it's going to help you figure out where you're getting in your own way so that you can do something about it. So each of those 3 areas, you'll come out with a score for each. And then you'll get from me a series of kind of tailored, very carefully curated resources that will help you to make some small changes that will make a difference to how you're feeling about going about your days and getting stuff done. And the average time it takes for people to complete is about 2 minutes. So it's not going to take much of your time.
Great. We can all find 2 minutes.
Yeah. So you can find that at louisemiller.uk/quiz.
So it's .uk, not .co.uk.
Yes. So just to confuse people, yeah, louisemiller.uk/quiz. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll put that link in the show notes as well. Louise, this has been brilliant. Before we wrap up, is there anything you feel we haven't touched on? I can't imagine there is, but maybe there is, that the audience might find helpful as they start to find their personal productivity roadmap?
I think that the main thing I would just love for people to take away is just the importance of the pause and the power of that pause. So I know we've spoken about that at length, but if you're in a frantic, frazzled, overwhelmed loop, the only way to get yourself back into that progress cycle that we talked about earlier is through the pause. You're not going to get yourself out of overwhelm from any of the other stages in that cycle. So if you can find ways, whether it's big pauses or just little 2-minute pauses, to just bring that more into your awareness as you're going through your days and try and implement that for yourself, I think you'll notice that makes a massive difference.
Yeah, I love that. And actually in the show notes, I'll link to a previous podcast we had with Christina Pop. I think it was about a year ago. And she was talking about how we find our natural working rhythm as a woman. And that was key. But she made the point, and it really stayed with me. And I hear this in my mind all the while. Every action starts with the rest. And in nature, we have the winter where everything rests before it can like spring and go into that whole process. And I thought that was such a powerful one. So it's great that you're confirming, yes, take that pause before you start. Productivity starts before action. I love that. Louise, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. This has been a pleasure. Thanks, Melitta.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you are going away with permission to pause, breathe, reflect, and rethink what productivity really means for you and what is going to underpin your vision for the next 12 months and beyond. One of the things I took away from this conversation and really appreciated was the reminder that productivity isn't about proving your worth, being busy and constantly creating just so you can earn that badge, but it's more about creating space for what matters most to you. And honestly, I think that's a message that many business owners need to hear right now. So if you know somebody in your network, maybe it's your business bestie, is struggling to get everything done right now, please do share this episode. This conversation may be just the message they need to hear right now. And if you resonated with this episode, please do come and share your thoughts over on LinkedIn, especially when it comes to how you manage your time. If you've done anything a little bit out of the ordinary, like building a blanket fort or changing location or doing something completely different to help you with your productivity and creativity, then please do come and let me know. I can't wait to hear what your thoughts, and let's see if we can spark some real conversation around different ways to manage our productivity and our energy. And as I said at the beginning, this is my 18th year in business. So I am planning a special webinar to share all the lessons, or the biggest and most important lessons I've learned over the last 18 years of running my own business, from when my first daughter was 5 months old. She's now 18 and about to graduate from her apprenticeship program. It's been a really interesting period of time. I've learned so much in that time, and I'm going to be sharing all of those lessons with you in a special live webinar with plenty of interaction and time for Q&A. So I do hope you'll join me for that. You'll find all the details at melittacampbell.com/18. That's the number 18. Save your little fingers typing 18. So melittacampbell.com/18. I'll also be putting together some special resources and offers to celebrate that 18th anniversary. So please do come and be part of that. Meantime, I'm Melitta Campbell, your business coach and value whisperer, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next episode.